So when we think about what we are called to be, the human condition often thinks about what we could add to ourselves, right? When I think about what I'm called to be, well, what class could I take? Well, what could I bring into my life? What could I do? How could I add so that I can become, right? We search for classes. We try to increase our abundance. We try in many ways. We try to educate ourselves. We try to put things in. Spiritual growth, though, often happens from peeling off the layers, from letting go of things, from really letting go and getting to a core level of being, a core level of wholeness. And from that place, growth is inevitable. From that place, expansion is inevitable. Consumerism, though, tells us, and we're saturated in it, are we not? We're saturated in it. And consumerism tells us that growth and expansion, when we want that, because that's always going to be the heart's call. The heart's call is always going to be to expand. In fact, Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, ideated the law of infinite expansion, and it's my favorite law. It's that everything in the universe is always pressing to expand and develop. That's just always happening, no matter what. Our consciousness is always evolving. It's always expanding. But we tend to think of that as adding on, as accumulating, and that comes from the environment around us. That comes from the idea of accumulation and consumerism. We think if we want to be satisfied, we need to have more. But the misunderstanding sometimes is how we get to that more. Anyone who has a garage, anyone who's on medication, anyone who's busy can tell you that sometimes less is more. There are movements based around gaining peace and gaining life satisfaction by letting go. Minimalism, the slow down movement, the slow food movement. Can we dive into the possibility today, explore the possibility that part of us that may be looking to grow something in our lives, and you name it for whatever it is for you, what is that place in your life that you want to expand, that you want to have grow? That maybe that idea that you need to add something on or do something to get something in that area is an illusion. That maybe, in fact, there is something to let go of. We are in the midst of the season of Lent. This is the 40-day period before Easter. And you probably know traditionally in Lent, you give something up. A lot of times you'll give up chocolate or candy or pizza. In Unity, we say, forget it. No, just kidding. You don't have to give up pizza. That's crazy. Who would do that? No, just kidding. But we take it as a spiritual practice on giving up an idea, a belief system, an action, something that no longer serves us at a core level. So if you want to change your actions, what thoughts can you change first? What can you shift? And what can you let go of and release so that in its absence, it creates a container, it creates a vessel for something new to come in. And so that's how we use the Lenten time. That's how we use that period as a spiritual practice. We let go to let in. We let go to grow. And so in this 40-day period before Easter, it's a quickened time. It's a time that a lot of people are engaging in a spiritual practice. One of my best minister friends, Reverend Kevin Ross in Unity of Sacramento, he has tied in an idea in his spiritual community of giving up something physical that we often do, like food, and tying it in with a spiritual practice. So what does that food represent? And tying in some belief system or thought. I thought that was a novel idea to bring them both together. The traditional idea of Lent, where you're sacrificing or you're not having something that you would want to have that might not be the best thing for you, but you're tying it in with a belief system, an underlying belief system, a thought that you're really knowing at your core level, I've grown out of that. See, the difference is in Unity, giving up the thought is not a diet. It's not temporary. It's not meant to be something that's forever. And, honestly, who's going to give up chocolate forever? And who's going to give up pizza forever? Not me, for sure. Steve and I are out of that one. I'd rather give up something like my mental addiction to drama. I'd rather give up something like thinking I'm not enough or my life isn't ready enough for X, Y, and Z to happen. I'd like to give up waiting for something to shift for me to feel good? Can you think of something in your heart that you're ready to let go of, that you're ready to really recognize that peace won't come from adding more onto this, that in fact, expansion will come from letting go? That's what today is about, really breathing into that. Wayne Dyer said something, the late and great Wayne Dyer. He said something at a conference I was at one time, and I've said it before, but it struck me so deeply. He said, whenever we are talking about something we want in our lives, when we're talking about what we want to create, what we want to form, what we want to have, if we find ourselves using spiritual principles and spiritual practice, and yes, there's a whole slew of them to be taken into consideration here, but if we find ourselves really engaging in spiritual practice and saying at the core of our being, I feel like I'm doing everything I know to do, and something's not moving, there's not movement, there's not fulfillment, there's not some sort of demonstration or manifestation of the good, he says there is something you are holding on to that you're not willing to let go of. There is something that you're negotiating with. There's something that you're saying, this is what I really want, but only if I can keep this stuff too. I want a healthy life, but only if I can keep my addiction. I want a marriage, but only if I can keep being single. And for some people that might work, you never know. But there is something that you want. I want this job that I've always wanted, but I'm not going to move out of my neighborhood to get it. I want to feel at peace, but I'm not going to make shifts in my relationship to look at codependence or look at altering things so that I can see if maybe there's something there for me to learn. I thought it was pretty poignant coming from such a seasoned teacher as Wayne Dyer. And so anytime there's a place in my life now where I'm thinking there's something that's on my heart, there's something that I would like, I ask myself that question. One, I start with, am I willing to really shift just about anything for this? Am I really willing? Am I really wanting this? Because sometimes we find out that no, I'm not wanting. And then we shift our vision, right? Do you get that? Then we shift our vision. If I am looking for a different job, but I want it here, I make that clear. I get clear on that in myself. I don't say I want this job, but it's not there, but I'm not willing to go there. Ask ourselves first, what are we willing to be and to give and to create to have that? What are we willing to do? But then to really stop and say, is there anything I'm holding on to that I'm not willing to let go of that might be holding me back? Consciously or unconsciously. Anyone that's had income issues knows that if you are on a larger budget and you go to a smaller budget immediately, if you don't shift your lifestyle but your income shifts, you're going to have lack. If you don't adjust, if you don't let go of something, if you have a shift and you don't let go of something, you can't keep adding on more. We have to be in alignment with our visions and in alignment with what's going on. We sometimes have to let go to grow. I was on this amazing experience with a couple of girlfriends a number of years ago. I can't even think how many years ago, but a number of years ago, and one of the girlfriends was getting married. So for her bachelorette party, we went on a hike. And it was in Colorado, and it was one of those big treks where you hike in the mountains for a day, you camp out in the middle of nowhere, and then you hike out another day. And so we were on this adventure, and the whole thing was centered around having sacred sisterhood time, acknowledging that transition shift in life of being single and having, your girlfriends and that support to married life. And so we had all this time together, and I've always kind of been known as, I don't know if the woo-woo one, I don't know what she'd say. She might use the word woo-woo. But regardless, I brought guidance cards with us so that we could pick cards while we're there. And so she was excited about doing the cards. We set them out. We're on the top of the mountain looking over this vista, and we get ready to do the cards. And I, kind of go through it with her, and she says, will you pick one for me? And I said, okay. So, we get centered, we get present, and I tell her to, just think about what her heart, is asking for right now, what it's looking at, what this is about. And I spread out the cards, and I unfold it. And it's a little bit of pressure, She's getting married. I'm hoping that this speaks to her soul, And I pull out the cards, and I flip one over, and it says death. And I thought, oh, Lord, why? And she took a deep breath, and she goes, that really fits. Because in a way, it's a death to an old life and the beginning of a new one. And she starts going into what she's letting go of to have more. She starts going into the processing and the place where she really is getting the significance of this life shift, this new phase. And the way she sat with it, thank God I didn't speak, I just sat there. The way she presenced it was incredible. And for her, it was a divine appointment, because for her, she saw the sweetness and the beauty in it and how it fits. That there's birth and death, but life has no opposite. That in fact, to truly grow, if we don't take the time and process and let go of the past, let go of the moments that came before, we can try to bring them into the future, and they can in fact become toxic in the future, can they not? If you try to take some of the old patterns that may have worked in a different set of circumstances, and you try to apply them saying, I'm going to bring all of these with me, so deal, that might not work for life. And when we look at nature, nature models this. We have the seasons, we have trees, and the trees have leaves and they fall. They don't try to just layer another leaf on top of another leaf on top of another leaf until all the branches crash. Water is the same way. It evaporates as it fills up. If it wasn't evaporating, we'd have a problem. But life models our spiritual practice. Life demonstrates our spiritual practice, letting go to grow. So many times in the human condition, we feel like we're falling apart, or life is falling apart, or we're having to release things that we really love. And if we take the spiritual condition along with the human condition and we allow them to dance together, we allow ourselves to remember that life is always changing. And the spiritual condition reminds us that when we're present to what is in the present moment, we have all of our needs met. And that in fact, it is a spiritual practice to let go, to grow. In the Lenten season, we talk about how transformation comes with release. As a community, what is ours to do to grow? As a spiritual community, whether we're in this sanctuary or whether we're on the live stream, if we're here, we probably have a heart for unity. If we're here, we probably have a heart for these teachings, the teachings that we're born blessed, the teachings that we so want to see in the world around us demonstrated, the ideas of unconditional love and non-resistance, of peace and loving kindness, of mindfulness. We want to see this prosper. We want to see this grow. As a community, what will we make the space for? How will we make the space? And what might we need to release in order to expand to the next level? You know, you can go to conferences and you can go to workshops and you can go to church planning, community planning, spiritual planning meetings, and it can all be about what programs to add on. What else you can do. I know the first few conferences I went to in Unity, I felt from the part that, was the great stuff, but the kind of type A, this program, this plan, and here's the 12-point implement this. I would come back feeling completely inadequate almost every time. I had to release the idea that I was like everyone else and realize that we're all different. We all bring unique gifts, right? That some things fit for some people, some things fit for others. Sometimes you'll have something and it'll be someone else's to do, and that's great too. But when we always have the pressure of adding on and thinking we have to do so much, we're often missing the mark. Can we remember that? Can we really, truly remember that? When we're feeling like I have to do more, what more can I do? What more can I do to fix this, to solve it, to create it? Can we turn a spiritual page and think, let me check out releasing here? Is there possibly something I could peel off, a layer I could peel off, a way that I could simplify, a way that I could let go? So what, as a spiritual community, might we be ready to release in order to grow? You know, they say in school and in trainings, they say anytime a spiritual community is wanting to grow, you need to operate like you're at the next level of spiritual community. So if you're family size, you have to operate one above that. Otherwise, people will start holding on to things. So even though they might say, I want to grow, it's like, I want to grow, but I want this many seats open and spacious around me. I want to grow, but I want to make sure I can get a hold of you 24 hours a day. I want to grow, but I want to make sure the music is exactly how I like it and not how it might be to bring in the next generation. Do you hear me? And we do the same thing in our own lives. One of the things that we've done in the past year here at Unity Village Chapel is we've looked at that. We've looked at what could be hindering growth. We looked at what could nurture growth. One of the things that we let go of, which is sad for a lot of the people that are here, and everything's evolving, so it's not like anything's done. But one thing that we shifted was the meet and greet. There's probably going to be a lot of, yeah! You may not have noticed it. Some of you are going, yeah! I just realized that. But we used to hear, we'd get up in the middle of the service and we'd meet and greet. And it could go on for 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. The meditation needed to be really short because meet and greet was long. And people would get up, right? And we'd hug each other and handshake and do all of this stuff for a while. And the feedback we started getting from people that were new, not from folks that had been here, that had their buddies, that it was like, oh, there you are, come here. Oh, there you are, come here. There you are, come here. Not the feedback from those of you, but the feedback from others that came here for the first, the second, third time was, it feels like I'm not part of the club. It felt like a group and I wasn't part of it. It was an awkward time and I was just standing there. I did a couple of hugs and I was just standing there. No one came over to hug me. Because we might not recognize from our own perspective that we're really excited to see the person we recognized, but we might not see the person that's brand new, that came in for the first time. Another bit of feedback we got is that some people, because of all of our differences in loving styles and physical styles and all that stuff, there was a whole slew of people that said, I come in late so I can avoid that. Because it's just hard for me. It's just not my style. I'm an introvert, and so I come in late. So they were making adjustments to not be a part of the whole picture so that they could come in for the parts that were the most comfortable, that most fit their style. And the third bit of feedback we got was that with the differences in people's experiences in the human condition, there were some people who would come here that had been physically abused, and so a hug didn't feel safe. And I recall an experience where someone shared that there was a hug, and you know, I used to give the handshake, hugs, hands of prayer, because that was the first step, was looking at how can we just make this fit for everyone. And nothing will ever fit for everyone, amen? But people had experiences where they said, I went to hands of prayer, or I went to handshake, and this man held me and picked me up and wouldn't let me go and said, in unity we hug, and held on. Now, in so many times, that is love. And so many times that would be like, that's what we're taught, to be loving and to be giving. But to someone that's been touched in the wrong way by the wrong person at the wrong time, that's a major violation. And this is not a safe sanctuary for me. But it's hard, isn't it, to let go, to grow, especially when it doesn't meet your own needs. So can we find ways, and when we look at things, so that we can figure out what the good is and figure out all the alternative ways to be, and know that it doesn't have to mean we're missing something. That in fact, right after the service, it could be hug-a-mania. Or before the service, or at the community center, which it really generally is. Because that's one of the gifts of unity. That's one of the sweet spots. One of the sweet spots of unity is that sometimes all this love and affection and this loving kindness and this unconditional, come here, I gotcha, sometimes that is what brings people out from, those make me uncomfortable, to, I get it now, I love those. I get it now. I love those. I want more, and I want to give them. And I want to give them to people like me who maybe used to show up late. But can we find alternative ways to get all that in the picture? Can we find ways to let go, to grow? Can we find ways to reach out even to the people that we've not seen before? There's something called the platinum rule, and I love it. I love it so much better than the golden rule. If any of you are unique individuals, you're going to like this one. The golden rule is what? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The platinum rule is do unto others. Did I just say it wrong? Okay. The platinum rule is to do unto others the way that they would like to have it done unto them. So that's about not assuming that everyone is the same way I am and has the same needs I have. But how would you like to be treated? How would you like to be greeted? Can I step out of my own sense of self-awareness and give? Another thing that can create the space where there's not expansion is holding on to some of the old things. If we want to expand and diversify as the community, there are things that may meet our own needs, but not be a welcome invitation for others. Charles Fillmore always said, and I respect this about our movement, he always said, I reserve the right to change my mind. So it wasn't, this is how we do it and it's done. This is how we do it, and you can't change it. He always said, I reserve the right to change my mind so that there could always be a creative process. So one of the things that unity can get criticized for is, and this is a terrible way to say it, but that we contemplate our navels. I know, poor us. We wish that the world contemplated their navels a little bit more. No, just kidding. But that we can be, that's just said because it's the idea that we can become so involved in our own spiritual, our own personal growth work. We can so be like, what does Erin need to do to evolve? What does Erin need to do to heal? What does Erin need to do to grow? That we can fail to see the world around us and fail to interact with it and fail to bring the gift of our presence and our spiritual principles into activity in the world around us. We can hear comments that, the Catholic Church does this, they do this, they feed people, they have soup kitchens, they do this. The evangelicals, they go out and they do this. But what do people in unity do? They do a lot of self-reflection. And that's true because we're an educational movement. We're not a movement based upon saving anyone outside of ourselves. We're an educational movement based on picking up the knowledge and the spiritual principles yourself and growing yourself, not telling anyone else they need to grow, not even sharing with anyone else this may be helpful for you. That's a little bit of where our blind side starts to come in. The difference between honoring and acknowledging that everyone is where they need to be, and honoring and acknowledging there are a lot of paths to awakening, and honoring and acknowledging that when we do our own transformation work inside, that shift happens on the outside, that we don't actually need to go in there and start manipulating the outer world with a hammer and nails to get real shift to happen. That in fact, sometimes that's just a Band-Aid, but if instead of giving a hand out, you give a hand up, you help someone up. That instead of telling someone what to do, you actually give an invitation. Then we can use our spiritual practice for growth and transformation. A lot of the millennials that we talk about and look for in spiritual community are interested in spiritual community that's engaged in the world. They're interested in engaged spirituality, not just coming somewhere on Sunday and contemplating something, not just reading a book that's about me, but saying, once I've got it for me, how do I bring it to the world? How do I make that a part of my work system, my school system, my political system, everything else? How do I bring these spiritual principles? How do I bring God as love to everything? And it falls short if we don't have that peace for some people. Then it seems like we're just singing Kumbaya, looking at the navel. Well, there's all these things happening around us. So can we let go of the idea that that's all we're about in order to grow into the idea that we in unity are actually perfectly positioned to bring light to our world in a way that the world hasn't seen it come necessarily from a spiritual community before, because it is this completely unattached way of unconditional love, but also sharing practice and principle through invitation, but not through shaming, not through guilt, not through judgment, but through our beingness, simply through our beingness and our presence. I was at Sister Giant last year, which is an event put on by Marianne Williamson, and she said very clearly, because this was an event based on all of these people that have the New Thought spiritual practice, the Unity Way, right? And then trying to stand in principle and also bring that way to the world in more powerful ways. And she said, she looked right at everyone in that room and she said, we are made for this work. We are made for this work. Because she said, we've been practicing doing it inside so much, we get it. We get accountability, we get spiritual growth, we get letting go, we get expansion, we get honoring people exactly where they are. She said, we've done it all in the microcosm. Now we're called to do it in the world around us and create a world that works for all. And we are perfectly made for this work. So are we willing to do what's ours to do? Are we willing to go the extra mile and to let go of some of the old things, the old habits and old patterns, so that we can make room for the new ones, so that we can take on new ways of being? And maybe that looks like a new sort of welcoming. Maybe that looks like when the person is sitting next to you and you can tell they're new or you just don't know them, you say, want me to buy you a coffee in the bookstore after? Let's get together. Maybe you take them on a walk around grounds. Maybe you invite someone and you reach out. Maybe that looks like moving from the mentality of a renter to an owner. You know, renters always ask someone else to fix it. They always ask someone else to pay for it. They always ask someone else to paint it. But an owner says, let me look at the resources within me and among us, and let's get this done. An owner takes it on. An owner recognizes that I am a minister everywhere I go. And that doesn't take an ordination. The ordination is at birth. The ordination is at birth. And it's one that is freely and openly given to all of us with all of the resources needed to develop it and to awaken it. It means honoring the sacred community, making connections. So diving into the personal level this week and this day, what are you waiting for to get something? Is there something in your life that you've been waiting to get? Just breathe into that. Just pause with it. And is it possible that there may be something to let go of? What in your personal life do you need to let go of in order to grow? What is something you've been waiting for or holding on to or unwilling to release? Just breathe into that. And take a deep breath. Launch a prayer from the core of your being. And just simply open up space. Open up space in the possibility. I can tell you for me that I've been in unity since 2005. Well, 2003. And that's not in unity, that's in unity ministry since 2003. So I was 28 years old when I got into ministry. Now I just said my age. I was 28 years old. And I was on the road for a couple years. I went to Unity of Montclair, and I was there for 5 years. And I remember when I was at Unity of Montclair, I remember working so hard, because your first 5 years in anything, they say most teachers leave teaching within the first 5 years. Like, if you can hold on for 5 years, you're going to make it. You're going to be okay. The same thing in ministry. The same thing with anything that takes a big change, right? Give it a chance. And I remember staying up so late. I would stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would get tickets for having my car out on the road. So I would pay like $50 to go to work till 3 a.m. because I was so passionate about it. It was the baby that I was growing and birthing at the time. I was excited about it, and I gave it everything. And at that time, my girlfriends were having real babies that were on the planet walking. And they were up all night, feeding and going to sleep and waking up and doing all this family stuff. And I remember thinking there must be phases in life that no matter what it is, you go through the same psychic process. You go through the same thing of giving in some way. And I gave to this movement. And I was waiting for the right relationship to come around and waiting and waiting. And another desire on my heart was to have a child, but I was waiting for everything to be right. Well, not everything. I knew enough to know that there's a lot of people that have the experience that you can never wait long enough. You know what I mean? You can never have everything in line to move forward. But that was on my heart. And I thought, well, I want to wait till I'm, married and in a partnership. I want to wait till this. I want to wait till that. And what do you think happened? Life keeps going, doesn't it? And I thought to myself, in unity, anything can happen at any time. Just keep holding it and keep demonstrating it. So when people would say, well, when you get to this age, you should start looking at it. When you get to that age, you should start looking at it. I kept going, anything can happen at any time. I could be 75 and get pregnant. It'll be fine. I had to let go of some of the grand illusions around spiritual practice and bring together in balance and harmony the human condition and spiritual practice. So one of the things I let go of was waiting for anything to happen. And I let go of the ideas of how that should happen or my attachment to it. And some people may think that this winter I had a lot of party pizzas and Haagen-Dazs, but in fact, I'm having a baby. She's been hiding under here for a little while now. But there were certainly things I had to let go of, and that's a deep spiritual practice, is it not? Letting go of the ways, letting go of the ideas, letting go of I'm comfortable with this, but not with that. Well, something's supposed to look like this or like that. Are we willing to let go of our plans for our divine appointments? Namaste.